Every day, millions of people go online to search for local businesses. Does your small business show up? When you create a website on WordPress.com, you make it easier for your customers to find you, to connect with you, to hear how you can help them. Your business needs an online home. It needs a WordPress.com website. You don't need experience setting up websites. WordPress guides you through the process from start to finish. They take care of the technical stuff, so it's easy to get your site up and running. Their customer support team is made up of WordPress experts eager to help you get the most from your site. They're available to help 24 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and weekends. Plans start at just $4 a month, and all WordPress plans include a custom domain name for the life of the plan. Come see why 28% of all websites run on WordPress. Get started today with 15% off any new plan purchase. Go to WordPress.com/Golic to create your website and find the plan that's right for you. That's WordPress.com/Golic for 15% off your brand new website. WordPress.com/Golic.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I feel like I'm on top of the world.
Disclaimer, you will not be transported to the top of the world. In the unlikely event you find yourself at the Arctic Circle, seek shelter from the elements immediately to avoid frostbite and or hypothermia. Geico will not be responsible if you find yourself in a cave or crevasse with a lonely abominable snowman, who in all likelihood will force you to play games including but not limited to Go Fish, charades, Chinese checkers, or his personal favorite, Red Rover, send Yeti on over. Geico is not liable for any damages, either physical or emotional.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Glad you're with us on a Wednesday morning. Hope your day is off to a good start and up and running. And by running, I mean, like, is your car running in the frigid entire, Midwest and East Coast of the country?
Cold snap that's been going on. It's supposed to be a big snowstorm tomorrow.
We're getting some frozen precipitation right now in Florida.
That really is. Yeah. All the local media people here lose their minds. With this is their, as you mentioned, their Super Bowl.
Is their Super Bowl, their World Series, their NCAA Final Four all rolled into one when you get a winter storm.
This is it for them. It gets no better than when it's a shame because they're talking about bad things that are going to happen to us. We love talking about all the good games that are coming up and all the different sports and all the great things that are happening. They're just living for the fact that you're going to be snowed in for days.
They name all the storms.
Yeah, exactly.
It's Winter Storm Brady.
Yeah, it's their joy.
It's the segment. It goes alphabetically. Obviously, we had the A storm. I don't remember what it was, but it's just, this will be Winter Storm Brady hitting us, and it's again.
You have meetings about that. You have meeting, or you just have a list. Do you think they have a meeting to get lists, or you just have a list right now that's just okay? Another storm, boom, it goes to this.
Well, I think there's actually two, because if I remember correctly, a few years ago there was a winter storm list that came, from like the National Weather Center, NOAA, whatever, and then it was different. Here in where we live in the Hartford area, they had a different
name.
They had a different name because they thought it was a different storm, another storm. So I think there's one that comes out as the official, but I guess by region, if you feel like you have more storms that qualify, they can come through and you can give it your own name.
There's too much giddiness in the weather people world.
There was one a few years ago, and this is like 10 years ago. I can't remember, and we were on the NOAA site, NOAA.gov, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association, whatever.
Yeah,
and it was like, literally, if you go outside, this storm could kill you.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'm staying in there.
Yeah, I'm going to stay inside. Don't need to know that.
Just going to stay in. It was high winds and snow up to. We had that storm a few years ago, Nemo. You remember that one? It's like it snowed 3 feet over.
Nemo was a movie.
Yes, it was also a horrible storm.
Okay.
And I was stuck in my house for the entire time. It was brutal. But anyway, so that's what everyone's bracing for.
Yes.
We're presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And a reminder, we will be on the road live this Monday from Gate 2 at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta for the College Football National Championship game. I did not know we were at Gate 2. So
I did not either.
New thing.
It's the best gate there.
So apparently it is. We'll be there. Our bus will be there, our brand new bus. We're excited about that. And we will certainly be in the zone for that. Brought to you by AutoZone. Get in the zone. AutoZone. So we're excited about that. It's our first road trip. And we will get to that and all that stuff in a minute because Kirk Herbstreit will join us. But first, let's get to what's trending. Isaiah Thomas is trending for the first time this year. Scored 17 points in his Cavs debut in Tuesday's win over Portland, but is going to sit out tonight's game when Cleveland faces the Celtics in Boston on ESPN.
Yeah, off the bench this time around. When he was on the court, LeBron James was off the court. They were plus 18. He did very well. Obviously, he needs to work into getting to know this team, working with this team. And the big, to me, the big question is how does he feel when he gets up today? How much treatment will it take to get him to feel basically normal like he felt before the game last night? And that's it right now, is getting him that to need less and less the next day and feel more like himself after each game till he's, as 100% as he's going to be for the rest of the year. And the most important thing, getting in a mesh with the other players on the court and being ready for the playoffs.
Again, missed the first 36 with that hip injury. They're going to monitor his minutes going forward, but it will be LeBron and Kyrie for the second time this year. They faced off week 1 in Boston, in Cleveland. The Cavs won that one. This one tonight, 8 o'clock on ESPN, will be on up in Boston. How about the Vegas Golden Knights of the NHL? Give it up for them. They won their 8th straight game on Tuesday, 3-0 over the Preds. They become the only major North American pro sports franchise to win 8 straight games at any point during their inaugural season over the last 40 years.
Yeah, it's amazing.
40 seasons.
You go with, since it's the Denver Nuggets, won 8 straight in October, to October 22nd and November 9th back in 1976, their first NBA season. And how well are they doing? Well, they're 7-0 this year against the last 4 teams standing from last year's Stanley Cup playoffs. And they're 17-2-1 at home, best point percentage at home this season. They're 17-1-0 when scoring first this season. I mean, that's incredible because we know football's going there soon, and we're breaking down the two of them like, okay, there's 8 football games there, more of an event type of a thing where people coming in from out of town. Hockey a little different, 41 home games as opposed to 8. How will that go over? But and I honestly don't know about the crowd. Hembo, we can find that out, how the crowds have been there. But
he's still working on the math for money in the last segment.
We don't get Hembo much, so when we get him, we just put a lot of stuff on him. But from an on-ice X's and O perspective, boy, how well are they doing right now?
Well, not only that, they have 56 points. That's
only Tampa Bay has more.
Only Tampa Bay has more. They have done an amazing job. And you're right, to that point, Vegas, it won't be much of a home ice or home field advantage. Very much a home field advantage.
Really is. Good for
home
them.
Ice advantage for them, 17-2-1. So congratulations. And we'll finish off. What's trending with this? Well, something changed January 1st in the state of California, and Mike Tyson is trying to take advantage of that. Iron Mike. Maybe he's now marijuana Mike?
A little more mellow Mike.
Mellow Mike breaks ground on the California marijuana ranch, according to theblast.com. The former heavyweight champ will try his hand in the marijuana industry.
Yeah, it's because in California, recreational pot law went into effect 12:01 a.m. on Monday. A lot of ribbon cutting at some dispensaries around there. Someone's got to grow that pot. Yeah. So Mike Tyson and his crew, they're going to do it. They're just the guys to do it. And listen, this is a business thing, man. I mean, this is going to happen in other states where they're going to legalize this, and people getting in front of that and saying, okay, if they're going to sell it, someone has to grow it and distribute it. So let's jump in on that. And that's what Mike Tyson has done.
It'll be a cannabis resort 110 miles north of Los Angeles. A resort.
I would say it's
you will relax.
Every room has a lava lamp.
There you go. Well, that's certainly one way to look at it.
We're so old.
Peter Max drawings, is that what you're going with?
Are the millennials
next?
Going, what's a lava lamp now?
I think
Seriously?
Every time the millennials listen to the show, they say, what is it? We're trying to figure that out as well. Save us from ourselves. Let's bring in college football analyst Kirk Herbstreit, brought to you by Allstate, official protector of college football fans. Are you in good hands? And Herbie, you were certainly in good hands watching that game.
Wow.
The numbers for that semifinal between Oklahoma and Georgia were ridiculous. Over 27 million people watched it. What was it like to be there and call that game? It had to be one of the best games you'd ever been through.
Yeah, it was incredible. That game always, when you grew up in the Midwest, the Rose Bowl is always a unique place, and to be able to have that matchup unfold the way it did right in front of our eyes, it was what you hoped for. I mean, we've had really a tough time with the playoffs. We haven't had great games other than the Ohio State-Alabama game, and this was finally a matchup that we got, and it was competitive, and the way it went in the second half, it was just such a roller coaster ride. I mean, anything literally could happen. The momentum swings were as big as I've ever seen in a big game. Just when you think it looked like, okay, looks like Georgia has this game in control, here comes Oklahoma back, and obviously the game unfolded the way it did. But it was a lot of fun. Chris and I had a lot of fun doing it, and Tom and Maria, and hope for another great championship game.
Yeah, I'm sure you as a former quarterback enjoyed it. Me as a former D lineman, while it was entertaining, felt a lot for both defenses. They were giving up so many points in this. And, in breaking down the game, as it normally is. It can be both of these, but I'd like you to put a higher percentage to one. More credit to the way Georgia came back and adjusted in the second half, or less credit to Oklahoma for maybe not putting the ball in the hands enough of Baker Mayfield and letting him throw downfield as much. So where do you kind of weigh both sides of those?
You know, I definitely give Georgia the credit. And I'll go back and look at the film and maybe change my mind. But it's just been, for me, it's been a little bit of a whirlwind since the game has been over. But from what I remember, I remember the kickoff before the half, right, with 5 or 6 seconds left, and obviously they were trying to squib kick it and just not give them a chance for a big return, and it backfired. I mean, he hit the right of the Georgia player, and Georgia get smart play to just field it and get down and save as much time as they could, and really good job by Kirby not going for a Hail Mary there. Some people probably would have taken that shot. Instead, he rolls out and has just enough time there with 1 second left to at least try a field goal. And the kid hits a career long. And just like that, you're thinking, wow, I mean, yeah, it's 31-14 and everything's going Oklahoma's way, to 31-17. But to me, I even said at the time, I was like, that's a different feel. Now you're only down 2 touchdowns. It just sounds better when you're talking to your team in the locker room at halftime. Hey guys, we get a stop and we get the ball back to Jake Fromm. In this running game, you never know. We get within 1 score. I mean, it's a ball game, and that's exactly what happened. And so, and then after that, I mean, you guys watched it. The defensive line. Everybody talks about the adjustments that Georgia must have made, and they did make some adjustments. They got more aggressive. They came after Baker more. But, man, I think that the line of scrimmage just went in the favor of Georgia. Georgia just got nasty, got physical, and kind of beat up Oklahoma at the line of scrimmage. And I think that was kind of the turning point as much as anything, was the kickoff and then the way, the intensity that Georgia played with in the second half. But with all that being said, don't forget, Baker and Oklahoma still came back. They had the scoop and score by Stephen Parker. They had the touchdown pass by Baker. If there's anything, as I go back in my thoughts, it was with 55 seconds left. Georgia scores. I made a comment. Did they score too quickly? 3 timeouts for Baker Mayfield. I thought they would have been a little bit more aggressive with their play calling with the 55 seconds left and 3 timeouts. And then I thought in overtime, I thought both teams in the first overtime were kind of conservative, and I thought Oklahoma continued to be a little conservative based on their own standard. I thought we might see a little bit more go at Georgia as opposed to what we saw. Then the reverse handoff to a receiver, it was physical, not quick. That play really surprised me too, and that ended up being their third down play that ultimately set up the field goal that would be blocked.
Well, yeah, Kirk, for me, first of all, going back to the kick, thankfully it worked, because now Rodrigo Blankenship is a household name, and he needs to be.
Yes.
With the look that he was rocking, there's no clearly about that. But the two 3 and outs to start the half for the Georgia defense, to your point, I think really changed the game, because Oklahoma had done whatever they wanted. But, on this idea of whether Oklahoma lost it or Georgia won it, hey, I'm squarely in the camp that Georgia won that for 2 reasons.
Yeah.
One, they blocked that field goal, okay? I mean, it could have been real easy for them to just kick the field goal, and then, you never know what's going to happen. But they denied Oklahoma in overtime, and then they didn't need a field goal. To me, they did just enough to win the game more than Oklahoma did to lose the game.
And one thing I want to add, guys, because I don't know if this has not been talked about, but we're lucky to have Rogers Redding, who's he leads all the officials. He's supervisor of all the officials. And Dave Kataya, who's a former official out of the Pac-12, and Dave's with us every week. And because you just don't see a lot of college overtimes, maybe not everybody's familiar with the rules, but they do the coin toss, right? At overtime. And okay, I think Oklahoma won.
Yeah.
So you want the ball? You want the ball? Or you want to defer? We're going to defer. We want to go second with offense. Okay, so Oklahoma has a choice. Which end do you want to play at? We're going to play down here. Georgia does. We're going to play down here. Georgia said, okay. So they moved down. If you didn't realize at home watching, the end that they decided to go to was clearly the Georgia end of the stadium. So they play it out, both kick a field goal. Now, I wasn't aware of this personally. So now you go over to Oklahoma, or you go to Georgia. Do you want the ball to start the second half, or do you want to kick off, or do you want to play on defense? And they said, we're going to go on defense. Well, the official, I don't know if he did this, they're supposed to go to Oklahoma. Okay, which end of the field do you want to play on? I was surprised that they played both ends of the field in the Georgia end. Oklahoma had the opportunity to say, okay, well, we want to play down there, but they didn't. I have no idea if they were asked. I have no idea if they said, yeah, we want to play down there. I have no idea, but I did find it interesting that they went into the loudest part of that stadium when they had the option. Where that field goal got blocked, they did have the option to go to the other end of the field. I wanted to clarify it again with Rogers and Dave. They said, think about it like it's it's the start of a game. It's a coin toss, and every overtime is kind of like the start of the second half. Which end of the field do you want? We will take the ball. Both teams have an option of what they want to do, and I just found that interesting that Oklahoma did not switch ends of the field.
I didn't even realize that. That's a very interesting point. I want to ask you one on overtime. I don't want to get lost in it because I want to ask you about Bama as well and Clemson. I personally do not like the college overtime. The NFL, I don't like the fact that both teams don't get the ball. I think that's ridiculous, and they need to change that in the NFL as well.
Push it back a little bit.
Yeah. In college, to me, there's no punts involved, and you're automatically given field goal position. So at the very least, I'd like to see an offense have to work for a first down or two just to get in field goal position. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with that. I've always been a fan of both teams getting the ball. It's like I've become a huge NHL fan, and as exciting as a shootout can be, it's kind of sad in a bigger game. Even though in the playoffs they play it out, right. It's sad to see a game end in a shootout after you've watched them play the game. I'd like to see it pushed back. I'd like to see it maybe start at the 40. Have to work, get a first down or two to be able to actually try to have a chance at points. But I do like the concept. I do like, I kind of call it extra innings. It's top of the 10th, bottom of the 10th kind of feel to it. I like it. I like the idea, but I do wish they would maybe push the ball back a little bit. I'm with you on that for sure.
Well, Kirk Herbstreit with us, and we're talking about working for a first down. That's going to be the case for Georgia now. They go up against Alabama. They will be working for those first downs when you have what Raekwon and Dayron did in that win over Clemson. Look, that as much as that was all about offense, Herbie, at the Rose Bowl, this was really all about two amazing defenses. And you see 24-6. Well, how good was Clemson's defense? Well, basically, two of those scores were set up by Alabama's defense. I mean, that looked as good as the Alabama defense we've been accustomed to in 2015 and 2016 in that game.
Yeah, the thing that I think stood out to me anyway in that game was there was a debate at the end of this, the way there always is when early December and the rankings came out. In this case, it happened to be, should Alabama, a second SEC team, be in, or should Ohio State go in ahead of them? And, of course, Alabama went. There was a lot of debates and a lot of things written, a lot of things said. Clearly, I don't know if Nick Saban used it, but I'm sure Scott Cochran, their strength coach, did. Clearly, Alabama used that as some energy and fuel to get them ready. In fact, Tony Brown, one of their defensive backs, made some comments about some things that Dabo Swinney had said. And I think he had put Ohio State at 4 in the final coaches poll and Alabama at 5. They used that. They just looked angry. They looked like they were out to prove a point. The defense was finally healthy. And I don't know how anybody objectively could have watched that game and said, oh, clearly Alabama's not one of the top 4 teams. There was no debate. They went out there and played the game. They deserve a lot of credit for going out there and getting healthy. And with Jeremy Pruitt becoming the Tennessee head coach, there's a lot of stuff going on there. But this team going out, took care of business, and they just played with an energy. And isn't it rare to watch an Alabama Nick Saban team play as almost an underdog mentality? That's how they looked to me. They looked like they were playing with a chip on their shoulder. They looked like they were playing to prove a point, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and that led the way. And now here we go with Alabama and Georgia. I know it's 2 teams from the SEC. I know there are a lot of people based on the things that I've read. A lot of people are frustrated that it's two SEC teams, that top to bottom. It's not a great year in the SEC, but again, as an objective viewpoint, it's very hard for me to look at Georgia and Alabama, regardless of what their conference has done, and not say that these two are very deserving of being in a position that they're in. And it's going to be a physical game. It's going to be a fun game to watch. It's going to be very different from what we saw in the Rose Bowl. And the other thing is, it's a quick turnaround. I want to see who's going to be able to put themselves in a position to be able to go just a week later with the travel that's involved with Georgia and the physicality and the emotion that they had to put in to that game. It'd be fun to see how they are able to turn it around. And they're playing in their backyard right there in Atlanta. And it's gonna be a wild scene, that's for sure.
Last quick thought here, Herbie, on because we had the game to be played, is UCF. A lot being made. They beat Auburn.
Yeah.
What they're talking about. Remember, the football committee put them 12th. We had the simulated BCS standings printed up as well. They would have them 9th, where this committee had them 12th. Just in the minute we have left, your thought on UCF and what they did and what you think should have happened.
I think it's a shame to have to get involved in, it's, and then I get it. I think it's a magical year. I mean, it was, I do a show, Herbie's postseason. I pick images of the year or plays of the year, moments of the year. My moment of the year was Scott Frost with his team after they beat Memphis in the AAC championship, just to see his genuine emotion and what he felt for his players. I loved that, and the way his players loved him. And then he goes to Nebraska, and he handled it so first class and stayed on and wanted to finish with the players and ended up going on to beat Auburn. And what an incredible memory and celebration. And that's what that should be about to me for UCF, is lifetime memory. Always have 2017. And if they want to call themselves kind of a mythical national champion, for their own school, that's great. But as far as getting involved in should they have been in the playoff or not, it's very difficult when you play the schedule that some of the group of five play, unless you have a heavyweight or two in the non-conference. Like Boise State next year. I'll predict right now, Boise State, they play Oklahoma State in the non-conference. If they beat Oklahoma State and they start to get on fire, you'll see Boise State make their way up into the top 10, top 8, top 6, because of that Oklahoma State game in Stillwater. UCF really just never had that moment to be able to do that. I'm not saying they wouldn't have beaten somebody, but that's how you get the notoriety and the attention from the pollsters and the committee. And so, great year. They beat a great team in Auburn, and I think they should celebrate a fantastic year. And I understand why their fans would be upset about it, but maybe that's something that the committee, as they move forward and evaluating teams, they'll have even more respect now for the group of five because of what UCF has been able to do this year.
Well, certainly they are celebrating it. Danny White's thinking they won the national championship. You know what? They may not have gotten the eyes of the pollsters, but I think UCF got the eyes, and Scott Frost specifically got the eyes of people in college football for doing things the right way.
Right.
And the way he made that transition and staying back and winning and wanting to get that season across the finish line. Herbie, we appreciate it. We look forward to next weekend, or next Monday, rather. It's going to be a lot of fun. Thanks for being with
Herbie.
us.
You got it, guys. Take care.
Hey everyone, Mike Golic here. Support for the Golic Wingo podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. With Rocket Mortgage, you can apply simply and understand fully so you can mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS consumeraccess.org number 3030.
As we continue, presented by Progressive Insurance, all phone guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. I'm going to fix that for John. I think it's going to happen.
I do as well.
I understand why he said the way he said it, but if they offer him the job, he's going to take it.
Listen, you don't know how somebody's going to answer questions like this. John's name comes up every year for a head coaching job, and we've asked him every year. And a lot of times it's, I'm happy where I am, not thinking about that. And this year, I remember when we talked to him when it first started coming out, he said, never say never. So it kind of raised some eyebrows of, maybe this is the time he's looking to go back. And this morning, he was about as honest as could be as far as this is concerned, basically saying, if he's get offered this job, he's going to take this job. And talked about other candidates being looked at. I have no idea how many other candidates they're looking at. I mean, from the technical standpoint, there is a Rooney Rule they're supposed to be going through, correct?
Yes.
I mean, as far as, that is concerned. But once they go through, as John said, all their candidates, and that's why I asked him, if Mark Davis were to call you and offer you a job, would you be the next head coach? He said there's a good chance, which you're right means he's going to be the next coach, I think, and I think you believe as well, and I think most people think the next coach of the Oakland Raiders. And then you did ask him flat out about the rumor, or not the rumors, the
reports that he would have ownership.
That he would get as ownership as part of the deal, and he absolutely denied that, said that is not part of it at all. He's going to get paid a boatload of cash, there's no doubt about that, and more power to anybody getting all the money they can. But he said that part of it, the ownership part of it, was not true.
But again, he will be calling the Titans-Chiefs game for us on
right.
ESPN simulcast on ABC. So we'll see what happens there. By the way, this news just came in about the college championship game coming up between Alabama and Georgia, and more linebacker issues. Anthony Jennings, the linebacker, just posted this on Twitter. I played my last game, but I will be back stronger than ever next season. He recovers from knee surgery. So, look, that
hurts him.
That hurts some things that Nick Saban has been talking about. Their linebacking core has been decimated this year at times, and Anthony Jennings now, one of those linebackers, will not be there in the national championship.
Yeah, I mean, they've been nailed all year at the linebacker position. Injuries all year. Dylan Moses, Sean Deion Hamilton are both currently out with season-ending knee injuries. Dylan Moses was their 5-star true freshman who ended up playing some because of all the injuries that they've had. They've gone through so many injuries at that position, and that was the one. I know they were, and maybe they had more information to this going in. I'm sure Alabama fans who didn't were really keeping their fingers crossed of what that MRI was going to show, but now we know. Yet another linebacker down for the Crimson Tide.
And we'll see how that plays out going forward. Again, Monday, we will be there in Atlanta for the College Football National Championship game. By the way, we asked this of Hembo a couple of segments ago, and he's able to come through for us. We're looking on this day in history, January 3rd.
Yes.
Things that have happened. On 1920, the Yankees sold Babe Ruth, or the Red Sox sold Babe Ruth to the Yankees for $125,000.
Yes.
In today's dollars, $1.5 million. Still a bargain.
Still a drop in the bucket.
This one is the most interesting, though. In 1973, the Columbia Broadcasting System, otherwise known as CBS, sold the Yankees to a consortium headed by Tampa's George Steinbrenner for $10 million. That would be worth $56 million today.
Yeah, but
Forbes estimates the Yankees are worth $3.7 billion.
Yeah. One worked out pretty well.
Well, it's like real estate.
Yeah.
They're not making any more of it. Mm-hmm. So hold on to it. Eventually the land will always go up. So that is an amazing thing.
Yes, it is.
That they're worth $3.7 billion today, and in today's dollars, that $10 million would have parlay into $56 million.
Well played.
Thank you, sir. So anyway, something else that's going on here, the 28 modern era finalists for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, or actually all the finalists are out there. We have 15 modern era finalists, which will eventually go down to 10. Then they'll vote to get the initial classes. We got 2 senior finalists,
right,
and 1 contributor finalist. And it's interesting because one of those players, again, on the list is Terrell Owens. Now, Randy Moss is going in. Let's not kid ourselves. Randy Moss, I would be, well, let me put it this way. I would be stunned beyond belief if Randy Moss is not a first ballot Hall of Famer for the things he was able to do in the NFL. Look, there are probably going to be some writers that are going to be angry with him at the way he handled himself at times. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, the Pro Football Hall of Fame is about what you do on the field. That's it. Those are the only qualifications. Did you excel on the field?
What is interesting, I will say, is among the 25 modern-era wide receivers elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, only 5 went in their first year of eligibility.
Yep.
5. And the latest was 2010. That was Jerry Rice.
Who was the number one by far in everybody.
Before that, it was 95 and Steve Largent. Before that, you're going back to 1983 with Paul Warfield, 78 Lance Allworth, and 73 Raymond Berry. So you've had guys like Tim Brown waiting 6 years, Marvin Harrison 3 years, Andre Reed 9 years, Chris Carter 6 years, Art Monk 8 years, Stallworth 10 years, Lynn Swann 14 years. So it is not happened too often where you go in that first year. I think I think T.O. should have been in already.
Well, that's
the thing now. So now we have Randy Moss.
So let's assume that Randy Moss is getting in. I think we both agree that's going to happen, right?
Yes.
Okay, so now, because of what you just alluded to, and we only the 6th time ever that a wide receiver in the first ballot gets in, does the committee want to keep him as a standalone because of what that means being a first ballot wide receiver to go into the Hall of Fame in your very first try? And what does that do for someone like Terrell Owens? Just so people know, Terrell Owens, whether you love him or hate him, 8th all-time in receptions, receiving yards 2nd behind only Jerry Rice. Now, next year, Larry Fitzgerald might be able to pass him if he comes back and play. He's 3rd in receiving touchdowns. So he has the credentials. Whether you liked him or not, and he was a very divisive personality, his resume on the field warrants being in the Hall of Fame. Do you think they're going to put in Randy Moss and Terrell Owens in the same year?
No, I do not.
Yeah.
I think Randy Moss goes in. I don't think T.O. goes in. And I know, even our own Bill Polian had said, I think Hall of Famers are for people who make their teams better, not who detracted from them. What did Owens do to make his team better?
Well, I would say 2nd in receiving yards and 3rd in receiving touchdowns.
Listen, and I love Bill Polian. He's one of the greatest ever, but I disagree with that. I mean, that certainly is part of it, what kind of a teammate you are and how do you do your team. But the Hall of Famers are how great of a player you are as well. And T.O. is one of the greatest wide receivers to ever play in the game. It is a joke from the writers that he is not already in the Hall of Fame. A joke. And for these writers to sit there and with the high and mighty, we're going to decide we didn't like the way you acted, so we're going to keep you out of the Hall of Fame for a while, when it's an abomination for the fact that he is a Hall of Fame wide receiver who should be in the Hall of Fame. That said, I think Randy Moss gets in, and I think the high and mighty writers and voters do their thing again and say, we're going to keep you on the outside, T.O. looking in. He'll eventually get in, but he's going to wait. And it has been a position where guys have had to wait. Isaac Bruce is on the finalist list right now as well. He's not going to get in this year. I think at some point he does. But that line that forms at the wide receiver position, that is real. There is no doubt about that.
Well, here's part of the argument, and I'm with you. Just I want to be clear. I think he should be in. There's no question to me that Terrell Owens was. It's the eye test. Is a catch a catch? Is it a fumble or not a fumble? Is he a Hall of Famer or not a Hall of Famer? Terrell Owens to me was all of that. Even though he was sometimes as divisive as sand in a salad. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Just not. There's a lot of things that drove you crazy. But to that point, here's what some more things that Bill Polian said. What did Owens do to make his teams better? He put up a lot of numbers. Bill Parcells said that he was a disruptive force. Jerry Jones, who's probably one of the most easygoing people when it comes to disruptive players, got rid of him. I got texts from people in Philadelphia responding to the campaign saying this guy was a cancer and destroyed our football team. I get all of that, but it's all selective, is it not? I mean, Bill Parcells says he was a disruptive force. Didn't Parcells work with Lawrence Taylor?
Yeah.
Didn't Lawrence Taylor have a bunch of issues that made him somewhat disrupt? And he walked into the Hall of Fame.
Yes, he did.
Walked into the Hall of Fame. So it all depends on how you look at certain things. And I get it that sometimes he rubbed you the wrong way, and there's no question. He may not admit it, but I think in his mind he probably would say, yeah, maybe I should have done some things a little differently. But to me, that doesn't measure up against the production you saw on the field.
I completely agree. I think it's now
he's there.
And how about this? If you could choose one to have for your team, would it be Randy Moss or T.O.? Not in the Hall of Fame, but to play on your team.
Well, I would go with Randy Moss.
I would go with Randy Moss
because I think he had more of the instant home run. You know, the mailbox. I'm open. Hit me.
I agree. I would go. And
again, not detracting from what T.O. was.
This is splitting hairs. This is not saying you don't want T.O. For the production he had, but. So I do think Randy Moss gets in. I don't think T.O. gets in. I do think he eventually gets in, but he is an absolute Hall of Famer.
And look, to that point, several teams got rid of Randy Moss. I mean, the Vikings decided to move on.
Sure did.
Then he went to the Raiders. That didn't work out.
He wasn't without issue as well.
Correct.
So that's a thought process as well. Will these voters say, we're going to teach you a lesson too, Randy, and you're not.
I think Randy's good.
We don't feel you deserve to be in the Jerry Rice, Steve Largent, Paul Warfield, Lance Allworth, Raymond Berry, category of first time. I have no idea. I don't know what's in these guys' minds who run this thing and vote for this
eventually
thing.
He worked his way out of Bill Belichick's favor in New England.
You know what is amazing, though, that I found out is the voting, how they tell the people they're getting in. When we were in Houston for the Super Bowl last year, and that's where the players find out.
Yep.
I happened to be in the hotel, and I ran into Tony Baselli, who was up again this year for the list. And I saw him, and we were chatting in the hallway. We were staying in the same hotel. And I asked him, because I sure as hell never knew. Right. What happens? What's the process here? He said, like, for an hour, I think it was like from 3 to 4 in the afternoon, they had to be in their room, in their hotel room.
Just sitting there waiting?
Just waiting. And David Baker would come and Hall of Fame president would come knock on your door.
Yeah.
And if if nobody came to your door in an hour, you weren't in. If somebody knocked on your door, you were in. And later on, tough. I agree. Later on that day, I happened to get in an elevator. Who got on? David Baker and a camera crew.
There you go.
And I was like, David, what floor are you going to?
Exactly.
And Baselli was on my floor, and when he didn't get off on my floor, I was like, oh, I don't know. Yeah, and I felt kind of bad for Tony at that point.
By the way, David Baker, one of the largest human beings you will ever
meet. Well, I dealt with him a lot when he was running the Arena League.
Arena Football
Holy
League.
Smokes.
Absolutely.
Big man.
By the way, again, there's no character clause in the Pro Football Hall of Fame like there is in baseball.
Yeah.
It's simply about what were you on the field. Coming up, 2 coaches back next season. You might be surprised by both. Golic and Wingo, ESPN Radio, ESPN2.
Golic and Wingo, presented by 1-800-Flowers.com. Starting off the year with a little romance is easy at 1-800-Flowers.com. Right now, when you order a dozen multicolored roses for just $29.99, you get another dozen absolutely free. You want to order? Go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN.
We are Golic and Wingo, presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests joining us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line. And a couple of coaches are coming back, and for a variety of reasons that may surprise you. Mm-hmm. First of all, Marvin Lewis, it was widely reported, again, by people here, that they thought he was going to step away after the 15th season with the Cincinnati Bengals, but he now has a 2-year contract extension and is going to be back for at least 2 more years to try and win that elusive first playoff game. They last won a playoff game, I think, in 1990, that year when they beat, I think they beat the Oilers that year. And then they lost to the Raiders in the game where Bo Jackson ruined his hip. Avascular necrosis became a thing that people were aware of. So it's somewhat surprising, I think, for a couple of reasons. One, because from what we were hearing, Marvin was maybe looking to go somewhere else, and then the record and not making the playoffs again, but he gets a 2-year contract.
I'm surprised at this, and this is one of the classic, let's talk about how much you like the guy and respect the guy, and then throw out the word but, But
however,
but I don't understand this one. I mean, I am all for giving a guy a long chance, more than the 4 years, and making a change every few years. That doesn't, I don't think it does anybody any good. Give it some time, but then there's, okay, I gave it time and nothing happened. 15 years, 7 playoffs, 0 wins in the playoffs. And I know there are those that are saying, well, maybe they looked at some of the other candidates and they didn't find one that particularly appealed to them, so they wanted to stay with what they had. Well, what you have, let's be honest, is mediocrity, right?
Yep.
That's what you have with the team and the way it's been going. So you don't know what else is out there unless you try something else. And at some point, you get to the point where you say, you know what? We got to try something else.
Yeah.
And if the Bengals aren't there, I don't know what franchise will ever get there.
If Mike Brown isn't there, that's the overriding thing, because he likes familiarity. That's a big part of it.
And I get it. And for the most part, I'm with that as well. But even at some point, there's a line for that. So the responsibility there to say, okay, we need to try something else. It may not work right away, but do we keep going down this road? I can't believe there are many people in Cincinnati that are happy with this one.
Well, they're going to do it for 2 more years.
Yeah.
Much we know.
I'm very surprised at this one. I am.
And how about this one in the college ranks? Bill Snyder loves him some Manhattan, Kansas. He's 78 years old and will be back for a 27th year at Kansas State.
It's incredible. Mike did a Kansas State game, and he said it's pretty amazing when you're driving in on the road named after the coach, and you pass a statue of the coach, and then the coach is there coaching the team. Yeah. And he's there again for his 27th year. Just really amazing.
Well, just to put this in, I mean, I love you. I'm not doing this at 78. I can tell you that right now.
Or I should say the stadium, I think, is on the statue. I think the stadium.
Whatever. There's a lot of Bill Snyder stuff in Manhattan.
Yeah, you know who's running the program there. Let me put it that way, yeah.
Put it in some sort of perspective. Bill Snyder was born in the same month, October of 1939, as Lee Harvey Oswald. He's actually 11 days older than Lee Harvey Oswald would have been had Lee Harvey survived to this day. That's what we're talking about here.
Talk about a guy who just loves it.
He must love it.
Just loves.
And you know what? If that is for him, good for him.
Absolutely right.
You're not going to be here at 78, right? No. I'm trying to make it to 78. That's the goal.
You got no shot.
More than likely. Well, you see what I eat for breakfast every morning.
No shot.
Probably not even with those vegetables in a tablet that you're giving me that are probably helping a little bit, but not enough.
It's a great way to eat veggies.
It is the best way to eat veggies. All right, coming up, Isaiah Thomas is back, but he won't play in round 2 between the Cavs and the Celts tonight on ESPN. We'll talk to Brian Windhorst about what is the future and his plan in Cleveland. That's next. Stay with us.
Hello, I'd like to deposit this to checking.
Fate is a fickle master.
What?
The future is uncertain.
Okay, and what's my account balance?
The horizon is cloudy. I see a long, treacherous voyage filled with great peril.
Look, can I just get a deposit slip or something?
A fortune bank teller. Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
I see a yellow-eyed serpent and a low APR.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Every day, millions of people go online to search for local businesses. Does your small business show up? When you create a website on WordPress.com, you make it easier for your customers to find you, to connect with you, to hear how you can help them. Your business needs an online home. It needs a WordPress.com website. You don't need experience setting up websites. WordPress guides you through the process from start to finish. They take care of the technical stuff, so it's easy to get your site up and running. Their customer support team is made up of WordPress experts eager to help you get the most from your site. They're available to help 24 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and weekends. Plans start at just $4 a month, and all WordPress plans include a custom domain name for the life of the plan. Come see why 28% of all websites run on WordPress. Get started today with 15% off any new plan purchase. Go to WordPress.com/Golic to create your website and find the plan that's right for you. That's WordPress.com/Golic for 15% off your brand new website. WordPress.com/Golic.
Hey there, I'm a glue stick, so I have one job. I glue kid stuff. So sorry for being jealous of Geico, who does a ton more, like give you 24/7 access to thousands of licensed agents. And Geico has been around for over 75 years and has a 97% customer satisfaction rating. While I've just got mediocre adhesive skills, Geico also has an award-winning mobile app. Uh-oh, arts and crafts time. No eating the glue stick, Miss Lydia!
Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.
And Cliff is trying to keep us awake.
Like that a lot.
That's like a fresh hit of Jolt Cola right there.
Jolt Cola.
You remember Jolt Cola?
Yes, I certainly do.
All the sugar and twice the caffeine.
Yeah, just what everybody needs.
Woo! That'll wake you up in the morning.
Yeah.
Glad you're with us on Golic and Wingo, ESPN Radio and ESPN2, presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Lots to get to. Brian Windhorst, our ESPN NBA insider, will join us a little bit to talk about what Isaiah Thomas's return, or beginning rather, with the Cleveland Cavaliers means to that team going forward. We'll get into that in a little bit. We'll also talk a little football, a lot of things going on there, and talk a little bit more about our interview with Jon Gruden.
Yes,
where he seemed to make it pretty clear he gets the job. He's going if he's offered the job, he's going to take the job. And there were some parameters that were discussed about that job that may not be actually true. We'll get into all that a little bit later. But let's start with what's trending. And nothing is trending more than Vegas. When is Vegas not trending?
I love Vegas, and now you have another reason to love Vegas.
The Vegas Golden Knights won their 8th straight game on Tuesday, 3-0 over the Preds. According to Elias, they became only the only major North American pro sports franchise to win 8 straight games at any point in their inaugural season over the last 40 seasons.
Yeah, the last one, the Denver Nuggets, won 8 straight from October 22nd to November 9th in 76. In their first NBA season. So very impressive with what they're doing. And they're beating some of the big boys. They're 7-0 this season.
Well, the Preds.
When they faced the Final Four from last year's Stanley Cup playoffs, they're 17-2-1 at home. They're second in points only to Tampa Bay in the NHL. And I know the capacity, Hembo was telling me, the capacity in their arena is like third least, right? Or something
third
like
fewest?
that. Third fewest,
smallest?
as far as smallest.
Any of those words would work?
But they're getting people there. I mean, people, because that was the wonder. You know, when the Raiders go there, it's eight home games.
Right.
And home games in the NFL, it's like an event because there's only 8 of them. And an event in Vegas, are you kidding me? I mean, seriously, you can't. To me, I think it's going to be incredibly successful. But when you start talking about, a sport with 82 games, so 41 home games, you're like, well, okay. But again, the arena's smaller, and they're getting some good turnout there, and the team is playing incredibly well. So I think it's fantastic. I'm so happy, Trey, that we're past the stigma of, oh my God, we can't have sports in Vegas. Yeah. Do you know what goes on there? Yeah. Yes, we all know what goes on there, and you can have pro sports in Vegas, and you can deal with it. It's not like once you have it, oh my God, everything shady in the world is going to happen. So I'm so happy that it not only it's there, but it's doing as well as it's doing right now.
Well, to that point, part of the funding for the new football stadium is going to come from a hotel tax.
Yeah.
What is in most hotels in Las Vegas?
Casinos.
A casino.
Yes.
So, and what's in most casinos? A sports book.
I couldn't believe when I started hearing, wait a minute, the NFL, what are the players going to do? All they're going to be doing, they're going to go into the sports book and bet on their games. They're going to be hanging around the casinos all night long. No, they're not. No, they're not. You may have a few.
If they are, they're losing.
You may have a few knuckleheads here and there that are going to find their way out of the league but you learn how to be a professional, and you take responsibility for that. I think it's fantastic that pro sports are going there, and boy, the Golden Knights, what an incredible start for their inaugural season.
Again, 17-2-1 at home. So yep. we'll see whether home field carries out for the Raiders.
Right.
Home ice is definitely working this year for the Vegas Golden Knights in the NHL. And as we said, Jon Gruden joined us earlier this morning and responded to the rumors, or actually reports. Reports that he's going to be the next head coach of the Raiders. And he said if he's offered the job, there's a good chance he'll take it. We amended that to say he's going to take it.
Yeah.
If he offered the job.
Yeah, he is basically, and then I asked him generally why, back into coaching, because we saw our own Herm Edwards go back into coaching, and you could kind of see that coming. I really saw it firsthand when I helped him coach the Under Armour All-American game.
He loved doing that,
something
man.
he'd been doing for 8 years.
That.
So in essence, he was coaching guys that now he'll be coaching on the next level. All these 4- and 5-star, high school All-Americans he's coaching in this game, and he'll be recruiting a lot of those guys now to play for him at Arizona State. And you could just tell his passion, and you could hear and see Jon Gruden's passion in what he does now, whether it's in the booth, whether it's at his quarterback camp, wherever it is, such passion and love for the game of football. And these coaches, man, it's just in their blood, and they want to do it, and he wants to go back and do it, and he's going to listen. And the business side of it, he's going to get paid a lot of money for it. More power to him. More power to anybody that can go get what they can get, especially if it's doing something they love, because it's not like he was hurting, working in the Monday night booth.
No.
He was able to pay the bills extremely well. So while everything isn't about money, it doesn't mean you can't go out there and make a boatload of it, which he can do as well. But this guy loves coaching. And it'd be rumored year after year after year. You go in here, your name comes up there, everybody's after you. And this year he's been as honest as ever. In the interview with us this morning, he was extremely honest about the candidates and if there's other candidates. And we asked him flat out, if you get asked, will you take it? And he said, a good chance, which we take as yes. And then you asked him as well
about the ownership.
The reports about, as part of the deal, going to be ownership. And he absolutely denied that. He said there is no part of those contract negotiations that included the ownership part of it. So he was very honest about that as well. So I'd imagine it's just a matter of time before we get the announcement that Jon Gruden is the next head coach of the Oakland Raiders, soon to be the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, and I loved the way he answered that question. He said it made for a good segment.
Yes, it did. Yeah.
About ownership.
Exactly.
And the other thing, too, is, he will be calling the game for us on ESPN, which will be simulcast on ABC this weekend. Between the Titans and the Chiefs in Kansas City. So we'll see how that plays out going forward.
God, how will he be welcomed back in Oakland? Holy smokes.
Be good.
I mean, Marshawn Lynch really brought that energy with him from being from there and playing for them. But now Gruden coming back. Yeah. Man, that's just going to be fantastic.
It will be a very, very good thing. We'll see how that plays out going forward. Meanwhile, we saw how it played out last night when Isaiah Thomas finally made it his long-awaited Cleveland Cavaliers debut. 17 points in 19 minutes. And joining us to talk about it is Brian Windhorst, our ESPN NBA insider, author of 3 books, graduated from Kent State. And we'll be working tonight when the Cavs take on the Celtics at 8 on ESPN in Boston. Okay, Brian, your initial thoughts on what you saw out of Isaiah Thomas in 19 minutes of action, 17 points, basically doubling right about what the production had been for point guards for Cleveland all season long.
Yeah, the Cavs ranked 29th in scoring from their point guards up till last night, and obviously that changed. The most important thing for Isaiah, he is a guy whose entire game is built off of attacking the basket. That is how he got to who he is. And so the question is, when he comes back, will he be afraid of contact? Not only was he not afraid of contact, he got a technical foul for complaining about not getting a foul call. So that was a really good sign for the Cavs. He obviously put up a lot of points, and he obviously is another offensive weapon. They were in a slump offensively, guys. They had only been averaging about 96 points during their 3-game losing streak. He comes back. They put up 127. That wasn't the only reason. Their other guys had good nights too. But obviously he's a difference maker offensively for this team. Defensively is another story, but offensively certainly looked terrific in his first game.
Came off the bench. Certainly, everyone imagines he'll be starting at some point, but off the bench. When he was on the floor and LeBron was off the floor, they were plus 18 for that. But we know eventually they're going to be on the floor quite a bit together. So let's fast forward to when he's healthy and he's playing in the regular rotation and starting and around the playoff time. How do you see this offense running with Isaiah and LeBron on the court at the same time?
So I could make the argument, this is going to sound like a hot take, so just give me a second. I could make the argument that the Cavs' second most important player late in games, most important, is Kyle Korver. Because the way their offense operates, they really try to get Korver a lot of shots to play off LeBron. He's vitally important for them in fourth quarters. He leads the NBA in fourth quarter three-pointers. And teams had been starting to take Korver away from them. If you go back and look at the Cavs' losses, it was nights when Korver couldn't be effective in the fourth quarter. In fact, if you looked at the Warriors' game plan on Christmas Day, I would say point 1A of their game plan was take Kyle Korver away. He only got 3 shots off. When you add Isaiah Thomas to the mix, you add a much more dynamic player than Kyle Korver, and you can play Korver with Thomas and LeBron. And so that gives them a lot more windows in a matchup situation, in a we need a basket in this half-court situation late in games. I also thought yesterday, Golic, you mentioned they're plus 18. Already I can tell you the combination of Dwayne Wade and Isaiah Thomas playing together with LeBron sitting could be pretty dynamic. But the Cavs need another unstoppable option offensively late, and that's what Isaiah gives them.
Well, Brian, just to follow up to that point, how much of a concern has it been that Korver is their second best go-to guy? What does that say?
To me, that's the biggest thing that scouts had been learning watching the Cavs recently is if in the fourth quarter you can't stop LeBron, the guy's the number one scorer in the fourth quarter in the league, so you just camp on Korver and wait for them to get bogged down. It's been happening more and more. And this is what happened with Korver in Atlanta. When Atlanta had that 60-win season, Kyle Korver was an all-star, but when they got into the playoffs, teams just sat on him and the Cavs swept them. It was the same concept that I saw the Cavs used against Korver a couple of years ago. So it was actually, they were sort of, in my opinion, dangerously relying on Kyle late. And so Isaiah coming back really gives them a window because, to be honest with you guys, they struggle to play Kevin Love. Kevin Love's having an incredible season. He's averaging 20 and 10. He's going to be an all-star. He's been great. But they struggle to put him on the court late in games because he's a liability defensively. And so they were really relying heavily on offense without Kevin Love. And teams were figuring out how to slow them down. So this brings another option. Plus, guys, they're going into the toughest portion of their schedule. They're going into the doldrums of the season. And just having Isaiah back, he's such a breath of fresh air. He's energizing. He will energize them as they get from midseason onward here. I think that's going to help them just that alone.
Well, Brian, follow up there then as we go forward now with Isaiah Thomas. Again, he's not playing tonight. They want to manage his minutes. At what point do we think he'll be out there on a regular basis and being the starting point guard for the Cleveland Cavaliers?
Within days. I think it's pretty clear after seeing how he looked last night that the Cavs are protecting him today. And it's not just because they didn't think he was ready. I think they just wanted to protect him from the emotions of what tonight might be in Boston. And not because they think he wasn't going to play well. I think the vibe that I'm getting is, they didn't want him to go to Boston and go, 2 of 15 trying to show off and get off to a bad start there. No, they didn't want him to come to Boston and try to do something crazy like dunk in the game, trying to send a message to Danny Ainge. So if you watched him play last night, clearly he could have played before yesterday. And yeah, they might drag their trainers, their doctors out and say they were being cautious. Excuse me. But it's clear they were protecting him.
Protecting him, and he wasn't ducking the Celtics?
Absolutely not. Knowing Isaiah, he would have wanted to start and jam it down their throat. But he was dunking a week ago, and I just feel like the Cavs managed this in a way where they brought him back where there was no way he could play in tonight's game. And they did that to protect him from himself because they didn't want him to come into this game and feel like he had to be Superman and then threaten injuring himself or doing something he wasn't ready for. They're going to sort of bring him back slowly and letting him, unleash, this would have been maybe a second game, might have been a little too tall of an order. So I think, again, if you watched him play last night, you can't tell me he wouldn't have been okay to play Saturday in Utah and then play his second game tonight. But the Cavs, I think it's the right thing to do. It's not like they don't have another game in Boston. They have another game in Boston in early February. It's a Saturday night ABC game. It's going to be a major event. He'll get his moment there. But I think it's clear that he was healthy enough to go. And I don't blame him for doing it. And frankly, it's probably the smart decision.
And you mentioned Superman, so I guess that brings us to James Harden. Though Superman doesn't have his cape right now, he's going to miss at least 2 weeks with the hamstring strain. This is one of those, after 2 weeks, he's going to be reevaluated, which doesn't mean he's back in 2 weeks. They've already gone for a time without Chris Paul, and they were playing, obviously, extremely well. Second now in the conference to Golden State. How much are you worried about this? Not so much the initial 2 weeks, but then you reevaluate and then the possibility of re-injury down the road.
Exactly, Golic. So Harden is a guy who would, if he had his druthers, play 48 minutes from October until April. That's who he is. That's one of the reasons why he was a leading candidate for MVP. They revealed that the MRI showed a grade 2 sprain, which means he's got a partial tear of his hamstring. And the absolute last thing you want is a torn hamstring. If he tears it, his season will be over. So they are going to have to probably put him in a restraining harness to keep him off the floor, because at the end of the day, I know that they want the number 1 seed because their concept would be if they have a chance to have home court, it increases their chance of maybe knocking off the Warriors. So I get why they're going to feel pressure to win games, even though they're in February or whatever. But they're going to have to be super cautious with this. As with any hamstring injury in any sport, the danger of re-injuring it is real. And it's important to point out, they said they're going to reevaluate him in 2 weeks. That means they're probably going to put him back on the MRI machine. It doesn't mean he's going to be back in 2 weeks. And that's something that they're going to have to sell, not just to the fans, but to James himself.
No, that's a great point, Brian, as Brian Windhorst is with us. When people say 2 weeks, they think, oh, he's back in 2 weeks. No, that's just the process of where he may be in 2 weeks, which may mean it could be a little longer. Speaking of longer, Spurs' Greg Popovich has been around a long time, wins his 1,176th game, becoming the 5th winningest coach in NBA history. We talked about this a little bit earlier on the show, and I get it. It's different eras when you had no free agency and what Red Auerbach could do with the Celtics and what John Wooden could do with UCLA and what Bear Bryant could do with Alabama. But when you have what Belichick is doing now in the NFL, what Nick Saban is doing in college basketball, and what a guy like Greg Popovich has been able to do in the NBA with so many transitions of players and winning rings over different periods of time. We talked about this maybe potentially in this free agent era that we're in, being the golden age of coaches. What is it about Pop that makes him so willing and acceptable to find different pieces in place and find different ways to win?
Right. Well, it's a great point. It's a great comment on his legacy. I will say this. He has to thank goodness for Kawhi Leonard, because I do think it was his intention to retire with Tim Duncan, and Kawhi Leonard has breathed new life in his career. And the best thing you can say about Greg Popovich is he is progressive. Not only progressive in the way he plays, but progressive in the way he operates his entire franchise. So, yes, they've been a leader in innovation on how they play, going from big to small. Now, while the whole league's playing small, they're playing big again. Look at them trying to lead the way again. But also the other things that they do. For example, putting Becky Hammon on his coaching staff, being progressive in that area, leading the way in that area. They've been at the forefront in using sports science on their guys. They've been at the forefront in developing other techniques. Greg Popovich is a progressive in every sense of the word. He is not a guy who is saying back in my day. He never tells everybody about, oh, yeah, back in my day at the Air Force Academy, we got up at 4 a.m., blah, blah, blah. Instead, he asks, what can I do tomorrow? I think that's a lesson for all of us. We could all learn a lot from Greg Popovich, but one of the ways he approaches it is, yes, his experience and his wisdom and his ability to draw on what's happened in the past is a huge asset to him. But he challenges himself and the whole organization to be ahead of the curve. And that is why the Spurs, despite challenges in the NBA where they haven't been able to draft highly and they haven't been able to be a major free agent player for the most part, have continued to be a great team for 20 years.
So again, this is a regular season wins record right. We're talking about. He's fifth. Don Nelson is first. Popovich is 159 wins behind him. Do you think when Pop is done, he has the record?
He will. I would say this about my old colleague George Karl and Dick Mott and all those guys. Don't look at just the win numbers. Look at the losses. Pop has a hell of a lot fewer losses than the guys on that list. His winning percentage is damn impressive. So it's you always got to be careful with the counting stats. But I don't think anybody would dispute that Greg Popovich is one of the greatest coaches of all time, arguably the greatest coach.
Actually, that's a great point when you look at the losses because Gene Shue was a guy for a lot of years that had a bunch of wins, but he had a ton of losses.
Yeah, Lenny Wilkins has a ton of losses.
You have to put it. That's a great point, Brian. You have to look at not only how much did they win, but what was their winning percentage in those games.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have it in front of me, but my guess is Pop's efficiency is pretty darn good. I mean, they have an incredible. I can't remember. It's something like 18 or something straight 50-win seasons, except for the lockout year. I mean, you win 50 games. Not only do you win 50 games, but you win 50 games every year, extending Tim Duncan's career by sitting him. That was another thing that Pop and the Spurs pioneered. Now we see guys resting all the time. When Greg Popovich would say, hey, we're not putting Timmy on the plane to fly to Utah for this game, people thought he was crazy. But you know what? Tim Duncan, who had bad knees, was an All-NBA player at age 38. They extended the window and got 5 titles with him. And so with Popovich, not only pioneering resting and maximizing for the long run and still racking up these win totals year after year in the 50s. I mean, they won 60. They won their greatest years of their team history last year, won over 60 games. I mean, they are a tremendous example of not only intelligence, but longevity, and Popovich is no doubt the leader.
All right, Wendy, we appreciate the time this morning. Looking forward to Isaiah going all the way back to the beginning. Isaiah Thomas, when he becomes a regular fixture in that lineup, and just where that's going to take this Cleveland Cavalier team.
And it will be a great game tonight, even without Isaiah. These two organizations do not like each other.
No question. We look forward to that. Again, it's the first game in Boston since Kyrie Irving went. They started the season with the win the Cavs had over the Celtics in Cleveland, and now LeBron and company will be in Boston tonight. You'll be part of the broadcast tonight on ESPN. Brian, we appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Brian Windhorst with us. All right, coming up earlier, we had Jon Gruden on the show, and he was very forthright. I mean, he didn't pull any punches when we asked him all the questions about that. We'll get into that. We'll give you some of the highlights of that and a little something else, too, coming up next. Golic and Wingo, ESPN Radio, ESPN2.
Hey everyone, Mike Golic here. Support for the Golic Wingo podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. With Rocket Mortgage, you can apply simply and understand fully so you can mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLSconsumeraccess.org number 3030.
Continuing with you on this Wednesday morning, Golic and Wingo, ESPN Radio, ESPN2, Trey Wingo, Mike Golic. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And, Mike, we're bracing for Winter Storm Brady coming up here to the northeast coast. But people across this country are in a bitter, bitter freeze, and it's already sort of impacting Florida. It is snowing in Jacksonville, Florida, and Tallahassee, Florida right now.
That's amazing.
That's insane.
Yeah, it really is.
And Ginger Z, who does the weather for Good Morning America, and actually worked with us on NFL Live and SportsCenter when the Super Bowl 48 was in New York, and we were outside in Herald Square in our set down there. So got to work with her a little bit there. It is actually colder in Jacksonville, Florida right now than it is in parts of Alaska.
Is that with the wind chill? Oh, you're going to sneeze. Is that with the wind chill? Okay.
No, wind chill's a Jedi mind trick. Don't fall for it.
What does that mean?
The temperature is the temperature.
No, it's not. When the wind blows, it's colder. When you're standing...
It's not colder. It feels colder.
That's exactly right. That's wind chill.
The temperature is the same. The temperature is the same.
That's why it says feels like. That's wind chill.
But that's not what it is. They're sort of adjusting for what it goes.
Don't
fall for it.
Oh, no, I'm falling for it. If I stand outside and it's 32 degrees and I'm standing there and the wind's blowing on me and it says feels like 25, you know what it feels like? 25 degrees.
Only
That's
because
how
they're
cold
making
it is.
you think that.
No,
just
not at
go
all.
with what the temperature is.
No. If I'm standing in 32.
It's 32.
And then I go somewhere else and I'm standing in 32 and it's really windy and it feels like 25. You know what I am? I'm colder.
But what's the
because
temperature?
It feels like 25.
What's the temperature?
It feels like 25 degrees.
It's the same temperature.
No, it is not the same. It's not the same. When the wind's blowing on you, it's not the same temperature.
This is people just trying to get in your grill, man. You got to be mentally stronger than this.
You can't be this dumb.
You got to be mentally. You can't be this soft. You got to be mentally stronger than this.
No, it's not about soft.
32 is 32. It's here. It's here, Mike. It's in your head. It's all in your grill.
What don't you understand about wind?
I'm not falling for it. I'm not falling for the meteorological Jedi mind trick. The AMS seal not having any of it.
The who?
AMS, American Meteorological Society.
Oh, okay.
I had to do weather a couple of times in my first
Did you
job.
really?
Yeah. You know, we had an Alberta clipper coming down and pushing things across.
So you were in front of the whole green screen thing and had the clicker and such?
It was horrible. Yeah.
Really?
We had an news anchor, a weather guy, who, by the way, is now a local weather guy here.
Where was it?
Binghamton, New York.
Binghamton, New York.
Yeah.
We need that tape.
No, it doesn't exist.
Binghamton, New York, we need the tape, the video of Trey doing weather.
I think I did it like 2 or 3 times.
Really?
It was horrible. It was really horrible.
Is there any chance it exists?
Probably not. Probably not. I don't think I even recorded it because I knew how bad it was going to be.
Wow. Hembo, find that video.
Yeah, good luck with that. Good luck with that.
Binghamton, New York.
We had a sports guy, a news person, and a weather person, and 2 reporters. And when someone was sick, guess what?
I was just going to say,
do it all.
You weren't the weather guy, right?
No, I was the sports guy.
You were the sports guy, but you had to do weather.
My weather guy was a guy named Bob Maxson, who now works at NBC 30
Oh, really?
here. Yeah,
Bob. Okay, I know Bob. I don't know Bob.
Yeah, but because you watch.
I know of Bob.
Now, this means nothing to 90% of the people listening or watching, but at the same time, in Binghamton, New York, myself, Carl Ravitch, who does college basketball and baseball tonight for us, Bob Maxson, who's now a local weather guy here, and Bill Pito, who used to be here, now works at MSG. All of us were in Binghamton, New York at the same time.
So let me ask you
that, right?
Let me ask you that. That is very cool.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this. You're a sports guy. Bob Maxson was a weather guy.
Right.
If you had to, for one day, you walked into work, and as you were getting ready to prepare, they said, Trey, you're doing the weather today. Bob, you're doing the sports today. Who would have it harder?
Oh, Bob would destroy me. Bob would have been much better at sports than I would have been at weather. Not even close. Bob used to actually go out and shoot highlights for me.
All right, forgetting Bob being good at it, weatherman, sports guy, flip the jobs. Which would be harder to do?
Well, for me, because I'm not a scientist. I'm just a caveman.
Are weathermen really scientists?
Now,
or are they reading off the computer of what's going on and then putting it up on the graphic and just repeating it?
This was, first of all, if you're a meteorologist, you have an actual degree. Secondly,
and how hard is that to get? Can you get it online?
This was the 80s. There was no online. Okay,
okay, that's true.
There was nothing.
That's true.
We didn't even have a teleprompter at the
station. Is there a meteorological or whatever tech school?
They sent down maps via the satellite. We just put them up and made some things up. I mean, it was crazy.
So you're saying you had to go to school for it?
Absolutely.
Or it wasn't just a 3-credit class?
When you do the green screen, it's all backwards.
Right.
So you're looking this way, and what should be east is west, and west is east, and you're like, where
has to be harder than actually pulling the because come on, seriously. The weather is right there on the computer, right? And
we had no computers.
All the information.
We got it off the AP wire
machine. Whatever it was given to you, and you just put up the info, right?
No, see, it's
not like you were out there with a thermometer doing your own thing, okay?
It's much more complicated. It's much more complicated than that. I bow to weather people.
Right.
Because you got to worry about a Chinook and Alberta. A Chinook, it's a snow eater wind that comes out of western parts of Canada. Oh. Then you have your Alberta Clipper, which comes across, and then you have the Moisture Maker, which comes up the east coast and draws the moisture off the water and circles it back in over the frozen mass that comes down from Canada.
Did you learn all this in your 2 times as being a weatherman?
Well, I watch weather every once in a while. Every time there's a big storm, don't you watch the Weather Channel?
Well, I watch and I get disgusted at how giddy the Bob Maxims of the world are.
Bob Maxon,
I'm sorry.
Bob's my guy.
Yeah,
Bob's my guy.
Sorry, Bob. That's my fault.
Yeah. Well, we got completely off rails there. But it was doing the weather was very hard, especially when you had no equipment. Separate issue entirely. By the way, the Bills will feel right at home Sunday in Jacksonville.
Well, there you go. Yeah, it snows, yeah.
That's the best thing we got for the Bills.
Good point.
As it's going to be a little chilly down there, we believe.
Yeah.
Okay, so getting back to what we actually should be talking about, which is sports. We had Jon Gruden, who's our Monday Night Football analyst, still on the show earlier.
Right.
He's calling the wild card game for us on ESPN, which will be simulcast on ABC.
Saturday.
Titans Saturday. Said that, meant that, knew that. As the Titans were in Kansas City take on the Chiefs, and of course his name has been reported that he's going to be the next head coach of the Oakland Raiders, and you flat out asked him if he gets the offer, will he take it?
I think there's a good chance. I'm excited about where I am in terms of studying the game and prepared to come back and coach. I just don't want to sit here and speculate, and it's almost like I don't know what's going to happen, Mike. I got to be honest with you. It's been a long couple of weeks. I know they've gone through their process of interviewing candidates, and until they're done, I won't know, but I did have a good meeting with Mark. I've known him a long time and got a lot of respect for the Raider football organization.
Listen, the bottom line is if you're doing the interview, that means you want the job, right?
Yeah.
You're interviewing for the job. And I think a lot of us find it hard to believe, outside of them not coming to terms on a contract, that Mark Davis is going to offer Jon Gruden the job. And when he does, Jon Gruden is going to accept the job and become the head coach of the Oakland Raiders.
And, of course, one of the things that had been reported about that, not only would he be getting $1 gazillion a year, he would also reportedly get ownership, which really sets off a really interesting dynamic and a slippery slope for people like Bill Belichick or Pete Carroll with all the success he's had in Seattle and all these longtime established head coaches around the NFL.
Or for when Sean McVay wins the next 4 Super Bowls and his contract comes up, and then he wants ownership.
Big chunk of that, please. So I asked him point blank, is ownership part of the negotiations?
There's no truth to that at all. I heard Stephen Smith screaming at me on TV yesterday on one of his shows.
Well, he does that to everybody, just so you know.
That's one of the most there's no validity to that at all, none, zero. So that's a nice segment that I saw, but no ownership, that's for sure.
So again, putting to rest the issue that there will be a ownership part of this. That's straight from Jon, saying that would not be the case should this go the way that we both think it's going to go, that him taking the Raiders job.
Yeah, I that was interesting because as much as we love Jon, or it didn't even have to be Jon. You could tell me any person, is going to make $10 million a year and has some ownership. I would say make all the money you can. But there's no way if I were an owner in the league, and again, it would have to be approved by the owners or a majority of the owners, that why would they want to put themselves in that situation?
Why would they want to go down that road?
No way they'd want to open that Pandora's box. So while Mark Davis can want to do that all he wants, it would have to be approved, and I don't think it would ever get approved. But as you heard Jon Gruden say, there's no truth to that whatsoever. So I think now it's just a matter of when, not if, he's going to be named the head coach of the Oakland Raiders. Will they wait till after this game? Will we know before this game and he can sign off, after this wild card game and say, thanks for the memories and move on? But it looks like he'll be back in the silver and black. I think the fans there will be very excited because, let's break it down from a coach's standpoint. His winning percentage was good. What was it? 54. The winning percentage
he was plus 500
in the mid. Plus 500, and has a Super Bowl without question. But it's that aura of Jon Gruden now, isn't it? I mean, that people love his fire, his passion. He's extremely popular, and I think that's part of it as well for the Raiders. Of you got to play another year or two in a city where you're leaving, so you want the fans to still be engaged. And coming off of 2 years ago, you were ready for this year to be a big year for the Raiders, and it wasn't. But they have a lot of good pieces in place there. So if Jon can keep the interest going from the fan side and, win on that field like they did a couple of years ago and then bring that excitement to Vegas, I think that's exactly what the Raiders are shooting for. So, again, we all think it's just a matter of when, not if. Jon Gruden becomes the next head coach of the Oakland Raiders.
Well, the interesting thing there too is that for a while it looked like Tampa might be the landing spot, but Dirk Cutter is coming back.
Right.
How much of that is because they felt like Jon Gruden was going to the Raiders instead of back to Tampa? That's interesting. But if Jon Gruden does, and if there is an air quotes because we both think it's going to happen, his 16 season gap between coaching that team would be the largest gap in NFL history, and this is important, with the same team. Coaching stints on the same team. Because it would be 16 years. Now, Joe Gibbs came back. He left in 92 and came back in 2004 for Washington. The biggest gap probably in just NFL coaching would be Dick Vermeil, who left, I think, in 82 or 83 with the Eagles and then came back in 96.
Worked out pretty well, too, didn't it?
Worked out very well for him. Won a Super Bowl with the Rams with the greatest show on turf. 23-16 over the Tennessee Titans in Super Bowl 34, and then was ushered out for Mike Martz, and then really realized he wasn't done. Went on to have a very successful run in Kansas City. And by the way, was a part of ignominiously the only at that point. I'm not sure if it's still the same. I think it might be the only punt-free playoff game in NFL history.
Oh wow!
Well, they
nice
played
memory.
Thank you. They played the Colts, and I think it was 41-38 was the final score. 41-35. At that point, it was the first playoff game ever without a punt. Vermeil's gap was 82-97.
82, okay.
In that ballpark. So. Yeah.
That's a long gap. And then to come back and be as successful as he was.
And to win it was the best part. And I'll never forget that because I was in St. Louis when he got hired there. We had the Dick Vermeil press conference at noon, and we ran it on the noon news. And within 5 minutes, he had laughed, cried, and swore 3 times. Yeah. And people were like, we need to get this off the air. But that's who Dick is. I mean, he's one of the most emotionally raw guys of all time. He's great. He will tell you exactly how he's feeling at all times.
And that probably happened every day from there on.
More than likely.
Inside the facility. But back to where we originally started, I don't think there's any doubt that you have or I have that Jon Gruden is going to end up coaching the Raiders. A matter of, I don't know when they'll announce it, whenever I guess however they want to time it out, right? With he has to call a game Saturday. I don't know if that has anything to do with it or getting the contract done or where they are with that.
I think, what time's the game start? 4:20? It was 3.5 hours, 7:50.
Yeah.
Let's go with 7:50.
You mean an extra long goodbye to Sean McDonough at the end of that game?
Let's give him 8:15.
Yeah, there you go.
8:15 Saturday. We'll find out that Jon Gruden's probably going to be the next head coach of the Raiders. All right. Coming up, a ridiculous note about one of this weekend's NFL playoff games, which is really remarkable.
Yes, it is.
That's next. Golic and Wingo, ESPN Radio, ESPN2, traffic and weather together.
Golic and Wingo reminding you to check out the Stephen A. Smith Show. Hear what he's fired up about now. Weekdays from 1 to 3 Eastern on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, Sirius XM, and TuneIn Radio. And catch up with Stephen A. Smith Show podcast on demand on the ESPN app and TuneIn.
Speaking of the podcast you're talking about, it's Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. You can hear our entire conversation with Jon Gruden on the Golic and Wingo podcast. And again, shout out to Cliff as we're entering the last segment of the show, Closing Time by Semisonic.
There you go. I like that a lot.
Nicely done. Well done. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's Wild Card Weekend coming up. We're excited about that in the NFL, which will be a perfect segue to lead us into the College Football National Championship game on Monday, where we will be there. But according to Elias, Saturday, this is crazy. You go ahead and spill this one for us. This is amazing.
This is great. So Falcons-Rams game, it's going to mark the 5th time in postseason history that a team's head coach is younger than the opponent's starting quarterback.
That's crazy.
Sean McVay, head coach of the Rams,
31,
is younger than Matt Ryan, the quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons.
32.
Unreal. Let's go back to the other ones. 2008. Mike Tomlin, head coach of the Steelers, going against Kurt Warner, quarterback of the Rams. So Tomlin younger than Kurt Warner. 1993, Bill Cowher playing against a team quarterbacked by Joe Montana. Cowher younger than Montana. Now you're going back 1970 and 1969. 2 times the head coach was John Madden. In 1969, the opposing quarterback, Len Dawson. In 1970, the opposing quarterback, Johnny Unitas, and Madden was younger than both of them. That's really an amazing thing.
It really is. And of those matchups, Mike Tomlin as the head coach in Super Bowl 43 was the only one to win that playoff matchup. And that was a great game in Tampa down that year. By the way, I think some of those clips from those promos we did was you and I on NFL Live.
Yes, it was. It was.
That was really
gosh.
Good. But that game was 27-23, and the great Santonio Holmes catch. And the thing I remember most about that game is that there were 2 chances that Santonio had to catch the game-winning touchdown against the Cardinals in that game. He missed the easier catch and came up with the tougher catch, the unbelievable catch to win it. And had the Cardinals gone on to win that game, Larry Fitzgerald would have been the MVP. He was just ridiculous with that long touchdown to put them ahead. But what does it say? I mean, we actually had Jed York, on the show on NFL Live for Super Bowl 47. in New Orleans when, he was younger than most of the players, and he was the owner, some of the players. He was younger than some of the players. He was the owner of the team.
It's amazing.
It's an amazing dynamic.
So what do you think of that? I mean, listen, we'll start hitting some of the wild card games a lot more heavier tomorrow, but the only winner was Cowher over Montana. Could we get Tomlin winning over Kurt Warner? Could you think McVay at home?
That's a home game.
At home, playing against Matt Ryan and the Atlanta Falcons, last year's team in the Super Bowl.
I'd feel better about it if I felt like the Falcons' offense was in sync. I feel better about Matt Ryan continuing that trend of the older quarterback beating the younger
winning,
coach.
Yeah.
I just, even though they won that game, 22-10, I think, in the week 17 against Carolina, that offense has just not been right for 3 or 4 weeks. I agree. And the pass rush he's going to face, Matt Ryan, from that front four from the Rams. You get Brockers and Aaron Donald collapsing that pocket.
The running game with Gurley and how he's catching the ball out of the backfield as well. I do like the Rams in this game. I do think this could be the second time the younger coach wins this one over the older quarterback.
Well, they did it. They rested a lot of their players.
Yeah, they did.
In that final game of the regular season against San Francisco. And, they want those guys rested and ready to roll. Speaking of ready to roll, this from ESPN, Buffalo reporter Mike Rodecker does a great job with us on his coverage of the Bills. Head coach Sean McDermott said this morning that running back LaShawn McCoy with that right ankle injury will not practice, but will take it one day at a time about whether McCoy practices this week. On Tuesday, Adam Schefter said that McCoy is going to be a game-time decision and a close call for that playoff game.
Listen, as I've always talked about, injuries, it depends on the position you play. If it's a big old defensive tackle that has a bad ankle, you know what? We play in 5-10 yards of a square area, right? Where we're not cutting like running backs do. You probably could get away with it being a little worse, but still playing. A running back, shady, running the ball, trying to catch the ball out of the backfield on a bad ankle, different story. Obviously it's a monster. I may have taken him at least 80% of the time in my DraftKings lineup every week.
Right.
Taking that guy.
So, you know it was coming.
I mean, what a loss that would be if he can't play in that game.
Look, Phillip Rivers once played an AFC Championship game with a torn ACL because he was a quarterback.
Playing a pocket quarterback to boot.
Can't do that well. All right, Dan Le Batard's show is next. Stugotz will join us tomorrow. And by the way, folks, it's in your mind. Don't buy the wind chill myth. I'm going to go now.
Shut up.
Hello, I'd like to deposit this to checking.
Fate is a fickle master.
What?
The future is uncertain.
Okay, and what's my account balance?
The horizon is cloudy. I see a long, treacherous voyage filled with great peril.
Look, can I just get a deposit slip or something?
A fortune bank teller. Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
I see a yellow-eyed serpent and a low APR.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15%.